Today, we're going to take a look at our Vue Your Todos app, and we're going to go ahead and break it down into smaller components so that it's easier to maintain in the future. Let's dive into our spaghetti code. All right, so jumping back into our app, I've gone ahead and started up our local server. As you can see here in our terminal, so we're at localhost 3000. We have our app running on the right, and I'm already inside of our project inside of VS Code. All right, so when we take a look at our App.vue, which is where everything is being kept, we're gonna notice a couple things. Well, the first of which is that this is really long. Like, even though we have a more or less like simple to do MVC app, we have actually it's already over 316 lines of code. And frankly, this is a lot when it comes to managing our app, right? App.vue is really this global entry point where we then sort of break off to do individual things. So if you can imagine, this also plays a part as far as like pull requests and those sort of things, because if you're like, oh, we need to enhance this and everyone's working in App.vue, even though they're working on different features, this is kind of odd, right? App.vue really should be the global thing. And so, with any refactor, I really like to start with the simple and easy wins, because this way you know, like you make progress and you can feel that, and then slowly figure out what's complicated, and then spend the time to take that. Because otherwise, if you start with try to gut everything at once, you'll find that everything breaks and you have no idea what exactly just happened, right? So let's start. I think when it comes to refactoring a component, usually I like to start with the smallest piece, which is usually like any obvious pieces of like HTML and CSS that really should be broken up to its own thing. And so a great example of this here, as I'm looking at the template, is that we basically have this hero section here that contains like the heading and as we can see like some of the technology stacks behind what we're doing. And so there's really no reason for this to be part of App.vue, right? This is basically content. And so let's keep this simple, right? So if we go inside of our components, we're gonna go ahead and let's create a, we're gonna call it main hero component. And so inside of our main hero component, let's go ahead and start up our scaffold. So here we have the blocks that we need. Let's go ahead and hide my folder. And let's save, but split screen this. So main hero, command enter, automatically splits it. You can see it moves it over, which is awesome. So I can go ahead and just cut this over, actually. And let's just drop it in here for now. And you'll notice that one of the things we're already leveraging here is that there is no root div, right? For now, we're just gonna drop this on the page. We're not gonna worry about it being wrapped. And so in that regard, actually, did I not include the right thing? Why is there a p tag here? Is this an empty p tag? No, this is close. All right, I don't think we need this. All right, saved. So the hero's gone. This makes sense. So if we go ahead and now import, let's see, actually, is there anything? There's like a couple things in here, right? There's like page title, CSS, subtitle. So these two definitely should come on over. So let's move that. And then I think those are the main things that are actually associated with this. And so since we're inside of a component now, one of the things I like to do once we're beyond the app.vue is to always make sure we scope our styles directly to the component so it doesn't have any side effects to the rest of our app. So I personally prefer using CSS modules. And so here we have .pagetitle.subtitle. And so I'm going to go ahead and switch it over to camel case just to make things a little bit easier for naming conventions. But typically, well, no, I'm just going to keep it to the CSS convention. Take that back. And so here, right, to use our styles, we're going to go ahead and bind our class. And then it'll be $style. And then in this case, since I have the dash, this is the only valid syntax we have for really accessing the $style. And then here, we're going to have the same thing for our subtitle class. But since it is already a valid JavaScript key name, this should be good. So once we save here, there's actually no script right now, so we can actually just even delete that. We just have HTML and CSS. This is about as simple as it probably gets. So the way we're going to do this now is let's jump back up to our script and let's start importing some components. So we're going to import main hero from components, main hero, great, dot view, to be consistent, and then we have main hero. So now that we have main hero imported here, we need to go ahead and drop it inside of our template. So this went here. Whoops. And boom. All right, we have, that is our first refactor. So let's go ahead and, so in case, for those who haven't encountered CSS modules yet, you'll notice that right here, our title now is actually not only wrapped inside of the sort of like the class name we define, which is page title, there's also a hash that's also appended as well. And so typically as well, I'm actually used to seeing the component name prepended as well. So theoretically, this should actually say main hero page title in this case, but perhaps this is a Vite configuration that just hasn't been set up yet. But that's just one of the sort of ergonomics that can come. I think Vue CLI does this by default, but it looks like this may be a difference in Vite. Nonetheless, we still have the important thing that we care about here. So actually, does it? Okay, I think we're good here. Cool. So I'm going to go ahead and let's commit this change. So we have here, great, and then we have our main hero. So here we've done a refactor and abstract out main hero component. Okay, great. Okay. Now that we have that taken care of, the next thing we want to take a look at in terms of things to refactor is to go ahead and see if anything else, because everything else, right, is actually fairly complex. So there's no real like straight HTML that we can refactor out from App.vue. What we can do is look for things that are looped over, right? V4 is a really great indicator for something that really should be probably managed at a component level, just because, as we can see here, there's a lot going on. So in this particular case, looks like task list item is going to be one of the most complicated things we have. So I think when it comes to things being looped over, it looks like actually we have a pretty good opportunity here inside of, let's start simple. That's really what we want to go for here. And so we can really refactor this piece. There's a lot going on here. But it really should, really all this is a nav, like a nav bar that we have that we want to go ahead and just make it, basically make it clear what the user is clicking on. So I'm going to go ahead and work on this. So we're going to go ahead and open up our sidebar. Whoops. Looks like I opened Keynote by accident. Okay. And so I'm going to call this, TabNav, because that's what this is. Well, I don't want to make it too generic, so I'm going to say just let's see, TaskListNav. There you go. Let's call that. Okay. Okay. Actually, let's split screen this, and let's go ahead and we won't worry about seeing the preview just yet. So there is clearly a lot going on here. We can go ahead and maybe start small, right? It looks like each one of these items is really what's happening here. And so what we can do is, let's start by just pulling out the entire nav. I think this is probably the easiest thing. We want to eventually just have task list nav that's here. All right, so now that this is saved, everything is probably just going to yell at us, but that's fine. We're still refactoring. So what can we do? Well, we have this class called tab wrapper. Let's migrate over the CSS to. So tab wrapper, tab item, active. So we have a bunch of stuff here. Is there a tab button? Tab button is here. So see, this is one of the nice things about when you're consistent about prefixes with your CSS, it becomes much easier to see what's related to what. So here, it looks like generally speaking, anything prefixed with tab is going to be related to this component. So I'm just going to grab all this and we're going to drop it over here. Okay, and then the only other thing now is we're going to have to take a look at the fact that there are a lot of things going on here in terms of different methods and those sort of things. So here, let's go ahead and take a look. We have different state properties regarding current view. So it'll take a prop of current view, and I think that will determine what kind of class it is. So this is something that, because the current view is not something we want to necessarily, let's say, manage at the nav level. that's something that at the global level that's controlling the entire. I would say that at this page it feels a bit more like global state. So I'm gonna stick with this instinct and say that we're gonna get a current view prop that's gonna be type string. It'll be required. There won't be a. I guess in this case, you know what? We can default to all. This is totally fine. And then let's do a validator that accepts the current value. And then return, so we have, there's 3 that we currently accept. All current, and what's the other one? Completed. Okay, these are the only ones that are completed. And since it's an array, I think, is there index of or like find? Find might be the best, I think. Find item where. No, find doesn't. I would like an array of whether it's true or false. Okay, it's fine. I know for a fact we can just do index of value is not equal to -1. And so this is just basically a simple way of, call it like giving more sort of advanced typing to your props, so that you can say, okay, if this is included here, yell at me, otherwise this is wrong. And so the way we can see if this works, actually, yeah, I don't even know if it's going to support this. It might even break already, but we'll try it. So here you'll see that if I import TaskListNav from components, I think it's going to yell at me because it's not going to have half the things. But it's okay. We're going to just go with it. So we have TaskListNav. Let me actually blow up VS Code a little bit more so you all can see. Okay, so go down, go down, go down. And we put it here is where it's gonna live. This is where we want TaskListNav to ideally exist. Okay, and then when we refresh, okay, we see that we have our tabs actually. It's not yelling at us too hard, but we look like, okay, so it's warning us. That's fine that things are breaking. But well, here's what I wanna try. So right now, if I do, so let's see, current view, right? This is what we're saying is equal to, so let's do, if this works, and then we say it's current. Okay, good, it's switched over, right? This is good. But what happens if we do something that's wrong? Let's call this like wrong and save. What we'll see here, looks like Vite is, oh, here we go, invalid prop. This is incorrect. And so in the future, what we probably want, like from a developer experience position, is some sort of like more kind of visible warning. Because right now, like if no one has a console open, they're not going to get this. But at the bare minimum, you can see that we have failed the prop validation check. And so that's fine. So let's go ahead and do current view equals. So actually, we're going to bind current view to current view because we already have that inside of the global state. So which is nice. So this works as expected. Now we've fixed this piece. And then what else we need to know? We have a click set view. So set view in this case though is something that we're emitting back up and then we're basically triggering, right? So if that's the case, and this is repetitive too. So really what we're thinking is probably, yeah, the fact that we have repetitive aspects to this leads me to believe we are already thinking we need to actually break this down further. And so we have this already. Let's go ahead and commit what we have. So although with this commit, it's still a work in progress though, because it doesn't totally work. So I'm gonna hold off on this. We're gonna go one step further, which is sometimes a little bit dangerous, but I think we can do this. So since this list item should only exist within TaskListNav, I just realized actually this is not a good name for this at all because we talked about this being a tab, right? So I'm actually just gonna call it, I'm just calling it TabNav for now. Actually, I think this is probably the better thing to do. I am gonna run with this for now. TabNav. Not gonna worry too much. So this is one of the things, right, when it comes to refactoring. It's easy to sit here and try to think what is the perfect name, what is a perfect convention. Right now, this is the only TabNav on there. Like I was trying to be a little bit more explicit in case like in the future, you know, see that's the problem, right? You start getting in your head about what's in the future, what you're gonna do. TabNav is explicit as far as what it is and what it does. And so the reason why I'm saying this is because we're gonna have TabNav items. So these are where what we're refactoring next is a subsidiary, right? This is what's nice about being explicit about the relationship. So here, right, TabNavItem should only be used within this context. So we can go ahead, for example, and abstract this piece here, because we know that should be a list item. We know it's basically going to live inside of this tab wrapper. And so since tab item is going to live in here, we know a couple things. One, we should know that tab item as a CSS class should basically only live over here. And actually it looks like tab button. So I need to actually rename this, but we'll update the CSS so it's a little bit clearer in the future. So here, great, let's save this. And then, so it looks like we're only gonna have the tab wrapper here, which is actually gonna be pretty nice. Okay, let me look at this. Okay. So we see here, like if we're analyzing our components, we have 3 different shared things, right? We basically always get the actual, like the name of the current view. And so in this regard, we can say that the prop, as far as we know that we're gonna get call it the list name. So I'll call it that for now. This will be type string. So when it comes to the prop, we're gonna go ahead and make it required instead of a default, because we really don't know what that text is supposed to be, and I don't want to go ahead and make that assumption. So no default, no validator. All we need to do though is then make this, instead of this piece, this will be list name. And then the only thing we also need is actually the length of the task. So I'm gonna call this list length. And this should be a type, let's just make it a number, and this is also required. These are the 2 things that really make up, so list length. And then the other thing it's going to do here that we need to make sure we cover, let's see. Oh, right, so this is the tricky part. This is the part where it's actually tracking the current view and whether or not it's actually, depending on what the current view is, that's actually what's going to determine whether it's active or not. You know what though? No, I think the better thing then is actually just have an isActive state where it's a Boolean default false. And the reason I say this is because we really don't like. Certainly one of the ways we could solve this is to just pass current view down, and you can say, oh, that still works. But I think in terms of the TabNav, I think it makes a little bit more sense for TabNav to be responsible for receiving that prop of what's going on as far as the current view. Whereas, call it TabNavItem is a little bit more presentational and just supposed to like organize our thoughts a little bit more. But it doesn't necessarily need to be aware of how current view works. There's either an active state or it's not. Because if you think of it another way, when you put current view in TabNavItem, now you have sort of coupled that like it should be all current or complete a bit. And this keeps it just a smidge more generic, which I do like. So here's the isActive, and then it'll get the appropriate class, which is great. The only other thing though is that there's this click method where we're actually setting the view. And this is where it's a little bit trickier, right? Because this is what's updating. And so while there are a couple of different ways to handle this, at this point, I'm making the decision that the TaskListNav should be existing at the global state. And so what we probably need to do is simply, we can update basically we want to emit an event at this point that when someone clicks on this item, right, this TabNav item, that TabNav receives what was basically clicked. And then we can probably then trigger up. So this will be, I think, a 2-level emit, which feels like it could maybe be done a little bit cleaner, which we can think about later. But I think let's focus on quick wins. And so in my setup function, this means I'm gonna need that context argument, which is the second argument in basically setup, and will allow us to emit things. So what we're really looking for is this method called, let's see, when you click, it really is just an emit value, this dot, like that's all we're doing. So call it emit tab value. I'm just gonna be very explicit right now. And all it's responsible for is context.emit, again, emit tab value. And then the value is going to, in this case, be the name of the list name. So it'll just send in props. Sorry, I forgot. Props.listName. That's the only thing it cares about. And so if we save it like this, and then we need to return this emit tab value. And so then we can say emit tab value like this. I think that should be clean enough now, where what we're gonna do, which we'll see here, is going to, then we can delete all of this, I believe. Yeah. Okay, we're just gonna wipe it all out. Okay, and now this is probably where it'd be good to have some feedback, so I'm gonna collapse this back down, switch it over. And so inside of TabNav, right, nothing's showing up, which totally makes sense. But we're going to go ahead and import our TabNavItem from, no, it should be in here. There you go, TabNavItem.Vue. Should then go ahead and register. Actually, I think props goes first, or components. I can't remember. Usually one is better than the other for organizing, but I think components makes sense. For now, no, I think props makes the most sense to be first. I might find out I'm wrong later. Okay, and then here, theoretically, we should be able to say TabNavItem, where list name is equal to all, for example, and that should show up. And this is good. And so let's see, that looks good. And then we'll have this is active prop, which is based on whether current view is equal to all, like this. Okay, so already starting to get a little bit better. We're missing one list name, right? List name, list length. It's saying list length is missing, which is fine. So this means we're starting to introduce that complexity of like, how do we share the length of the actual list. And so it looks like if we get the current view, we're probably going to need a list of the, call it the dictionary that we want to refer to when it comes to like what we're looping through, right? Imagine this really should be a prop. So in this guard, I'm going to call it list meta, or task list overview. This is gonna be super explicit, but that's fine, because basically what it is going to be an array, and it's just going to be required true. I'm not going to bother writing a validator for that right now, because that is going to get a little tricky. So just to see it again, let's quickly write to show that we actually receive it. I'm going to go ahead and render it out on the page. All right, so what we're going to do inside here is we're going to get a prop called task list overview, and I'm just going to make sure, yeah, this is going to be the equivalent here. And so task list overview right now, if we're looking inside of our store, we have task views, which gives us the all task length and whatnot. But really, this should be a little bit more complex than this. We really want, if we're talking about the actual const task list overview, right? This is what we want. We want a model that's hopefully, sorry, it's an array, right? So we're looking for a model where it's like the name of the list, like all, and then we can go length is what we're kind of looking for, and then can say like 3. This is what we ultimately want to generate. And so if that's the case, it's kind of interesting. So we have current views and we have all. So it almost seems like the best thing for us to do is, we have a task views, which automatically determines all the different lengths. It looks like this is the best one to refactor, because this task views relates directly to this. And so when I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking we swap this out for now to actually just looks like I don't need to be too smart about this right now, right? This is one of the trippiest parts, I think, when it comes to refactoring things, is you're always super tempted to make things like to be very clever with the solution. And I think we might, like, again, let's just let's get somewhere, right? So name completed length, I misspelled length here. Some of you probably did catch that. And then length is here. And so you can see what I'm doing here is I'm creating that sort of data structure I'm looking for. And TaskList overview is here, but I'm gonna make this a reactive property though. Comma, refresh. All right, line 46. It does not. Oh, right. This thing's broken, of course. Okay, so if I refresh, it doesn't like it. Tasks views is not required. So in this case, I don't need task views. I think I'm gonna strip that out. And then we have this missing list length. That's fine. Task list overview. Okay, right, because we haven't abstracted this yet. So here we go. Here you go. Task list overview. Save. Ooh, okay. Okay, this looks pretty good. It looks like we got what we needed. So inside of NavItem, now that we have inside of Nav, as you might be guessing, I want to actually loop through this tab list. So for every task list in task list overview, we're going to give it a dynamic key of, I'm going to say task list dot name, and then oh wait, this needs to be wrapped, and then I'm just going to say task list and then dash the name. So this way it's in case we have other ones, like, because all current and completed is are fairly generic words. So we're going to loop through that. The list name is going to actually be bound to task list.name, and the active view is going to check whether or not current view is equal to task list.name. Save. Ooh, okay, yep, something's starting to appear. Very cool. Okay, but now we need list length, because that's the other thing. List length is going to be equal task list dot I think length is what I did. 0. Okay, hey, I think this worked. So if I added test, yep, complete, and then if I click on this, hey, it is okay. So we're getting there. We're actually really close. This is looking really clean. We have our general nav. It's updating. Our nav item has been refactored and is basically emitting. Well, I guess when we emit something, we need to do something with this emit. So emit tab value. This is what we're calling it. Okay. And so let's go ahead and do that. So here, we're going to loop through the key. Okay, I'm going to actually, this is where we bind it. And then let's listen to the event here. So when its emit value, we're going to go and say update current view. This is what the emit tab value does. And so inside of our setup, we're going to have our const update current view, which is going to receive a payload, if I'm not mistaken. And all I wanted to do for now is log the payload. That's all we want to do, but I need to expose update current view, because otherwise this won't do anything. So now when let me clear this. When we click, great, we see the value current. So this tells us what we need to basically send back up to our App.vue. So in this regard, we can then say, all right, then let's grab our emit. So we have our props and then we have our context. So in this case, context dot emit, and then we're gonna emit, and then again, update current view is what we're actually trying to do. And then the payload is just gonna be the payload that we receive. Actually, I don't think we need to be more I guess I know, you know what I can do? I can do payload.value because that's what we're just basically going to set it directly. I don't think we need to make it an object just yet. Sometimes I usually like to keep it as an object so that you can easily enhance, but in our case, I think that would be a pre-optimization. So to update current view now, this means we have an update current view emitted. So if we look at TabNav, I can go ahead and I'll listen for this. And inside of this, then update current view. I mean, to be honest, it does seem like this should just also be called update current view, but it does seem a little bit repetitive. I wish, yeah, I don't know, we'll see. Const update current view is equal to the payload, and then we're basically saying we're setting state.current view. Oh, set view, actually, that's what I called it. Oh, that means I don't need things. So set view, view label. See, this is the beauty of refactoring. All right, set view. If we just do it like this, this should then work. So here's, oh, wait, switch. Ha! Yes, it did work. That's the tricky thing. I think it looks like sometimes the hot model reloading doesn't reload all the relevant pieces. So if you're ever finding yourself working on something and you're like, that's kind of odd, I would definitely just manually do the refresh. Okay, so I think we did it. We swapped out our nav item correctly, and we have our TabNav, which is super great. That was actually not very painful at all. And so let's go ahead, and before I wrap up though, one of the things I don't want to commit is the fact that like all these are basically not, they're not scoped. So I'm gonna call it TabNav wrapper, because again, I really do want to be explicit with these sort of things. And so here I can then bind this to style to TabNav wrapper. That's what I would want to do. And then inside of TabNavItem, we can go ahead and do basically achieve a similar effect, where we'll do the module here, and then inside of here, TabNavItem. Yeah, I should really replace all these. So I would say this is where having some preprocessors would be nice. But again, TabNavItem. This is really what this is. Great. And then I'm going to be super explicit in that this is a TabNavItem button. Again, I know that a lot of times as developers, we try to make things as short as possible, but I gotta say, shortness helps to an extent, but I think it actually often sort of trips us up in the time we actually need us to be explicit, which is in the debugging phase. And so personally, I will choose, I will choose being I would choose longer CSS class names any day of the week. The only thing though I'm realizing though as I'm working with this is that this will be interesting to see what happens to this dot is active, to see if it'll actually like work as intended. It's because I don't know if it will actually. No duplicate class entry. Oh, right. Okay, I have multiple dynamic bindings now. All right, so this is gonna be where I probably need to instead, oh, I'm almost at the point where it almost doesn't make sense to do it all in the, I forgot what it is. Yeah, this is kind of tricky now. I think we're actually at the point where it makes a little bit more sense to do this as a computed property. So I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna say TabNavItem class names. That's what I'm going to do. So sticking to this, we're going to say emit tab value. So const tab nav item class names is going to be equal to, all right, so I'm going to need a computed property for this. So here we go, import computed from Vue. And so the computed property here is going to be the fact that basically return, so if is active is true, and I realize is active is a prop, so I need to actually access that. There's no this, so prop dot is active is true, right? Based on this, then what we would want is to return style, like return this thing. Otherwise, although interesting, I've never actually had to install $style inside of a setup method, so this might actually break, but we'll see. The only thing now here is that it's going to be TabNavItem plus is active. I don't know if this is going to work at all. We're going to find out. So let's get ready for the magic save. And hold up. I know this is going to break, so let's just and save. And oof, okay, that really didn't like it. That's fine. Style is not defined. That's what I figured. Okay, so the question here, the mystery we need to hunt right now is where is styles being generated, and how do we access it? So right now, I think the easiest thing for us to do is to, for now, just comment this. At least comment this piece out, and let's just give it something generic so it doesn't yell at us. Like test. So now when we refresh, okay, it's not broken. But what we do need it to do, honestly, though, my guess is it's going to be somewhere inside of a context adders object. That is my guess. But apparently there's no context. Oh, okay, I was going to say. Okay, within attributes, adders, target, that's fine, handler. Oh, this is so interesting. All right, let's look at some docs. Okay. It'll include class styles. Adders include See real quick. Yeah, adders should include styles and classes. So, is it possible because it hasn't been compiled yet? All right, context dot adders. I think is what I want. Okay, so it looks like there may not be a way to do this. At least not in a way that's obvious to me right now inside of setup. So this is interesting. I'll have to reach out to the team and get some clarification on this, because I've looked around some of the docs and poking around. I don't really see anything. So it's okay though, right? This is like, we don't want perfection to be the enemy of good. So let's go ahead and drop. I really wish I probably had committed earlier, but we can. This is where, yeah, committing. Okay, so let's just undo until we restore this back to a point where it's a little bit better. Oop, that's fine. We don't need that computed. This is right. Oh gosh. Okay. So don't bind this. Don't bind this. So I am going to take the easier way out on this one. So let's see, if I don't use modules, instead I'll use scoped. At the bare minimum now, it's not the perfect scoping of CSS, but it certainly does the trick, and it is working right now. So let's stick with that, and then let's leave that there, and module we have here. So good enough. Let's go ahead and commit this. Great. Okay. So refactor, create TabNav Component, and abstract logic. Cool. In the next episode, we're going to take a look at how we can further break down our app into shared functionality pieces, and even take a look at how shared state might be managed using Composition API. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.